The Sun Never Sets is the latest from the mumblecore legend Joe Swanberg, and surprisingly, it's one of his best yet. For those of you who aren't familiar with Swanberg, he rose to prominence as kind of one of the early fathers, so to speak, of this mumblecore movement, alongside folks like Greta Gerwig, whom he collaborated with quite frequently in the early years. Mumblecore is really just kind of rooted in people talking very naturalistic dialogue, sometimes improvisation, and not always a lot happening in terms of very specific plot beats. Again, that's a kind of surface level explanation, but nonetheless. And Swanberg was a very prolific director. I say was because he directed like 20 feature films or close to in less than 15 years, kind of from the start of his career as an emerging filmmaker. But in recent years, he kind of took a step back from directing feature films. He had a Netflix series for 3 seasons called Easy that ended in 2019, and he hadn't directed a full feature film since 2017. He had a 45-minute film in 2020, so wherever you want to classify that. But with The Sun Never Sets, Swanberg is back with a full feature 100-minute long film. The film follows Dakota Fanning playing a character Wendy, Jake Johnson as Jack, and heartthrob Cory Michael Smith as Chuck. And essentially, Wendy's life is thrown into utter chaos as she's dating this older man, Jack, and runs into her ex boyfriend, Chuck. And these two men are very, very different. They kind of represent these two sides of herself, and she has to choose what direction she wants to go. Does she want to be with either of them? Does she need to be alone? And it's interesting, just hearing Joe talk about this film. I saw this film on its second or third screening here at South by Southwest and was seated right behind Joe. And after the film, he talked about how this character Jack was essentially a loose kind of imagining of himself. He was relatively recently divorced in 2019, and he had dated a younger woman who was a little bit more adventurous and wanted to do things that he didn't really want to do, and kind of figuring out what he needed at this point of his life. Is it too late to kind of dive into new things when you're so settled into your old ways? And what is really interesting about this film is how its plot really is straight out of a Hallmark movie, at least on the surface. You have this love triangle. You have a woman torn between a stable older man and the lost love of her youth, someone who pushes her outside of her comfort zone and goes on adventures with, etc., etc. It really is a film on that surface level that we've seen time and time again. And that's why it makes such an interesting case study in how it manages to work, how it really lives on such a thin line, how it could so easily devolve into this classic rom com territory, but it never quite does. It really shows how there is such a small margin of error when you're making a film, how quickly it can become something that you don't intend it to be. And it really comes down to the nuance, it comes down to the performances. I would say that it comes down to the writing, but anyone familiar with Swanberg's work knows that a lot of the dialogue is improvised by the actors, and maybe that is what helps kind of remove it from what could otherwise be a very cliched story. In this instance, Swanberg wrote 55 pages for a 100-minute film, and for those of you who aren't aware, the kind of industry standard is roughly 1 to 1. So if you have a 100-minute film, you should have a 100-page script, and 55 pages for 100 minutes is actually quite a bit more than Swanberg has written in the past. He's noted that he's literally directed a feature with a one-page outline. Probably wouldn't recommend trying that at home. I mean, try it, but it might not work out for you like it has for him. But all of this is to say that this kind of naturalistic approach really does work for the film's benefit. We truly believe that these characters are experiencing what they are experiencing. And yes, they act irrationally at times, but that makes sense within the context of this moment in their lives. They are kind of clouded by love, potentially, by jealousy, by a sense of possessiveness, by not really understanding what they need or why they feel a certain way. They are experiencing very human emotions, and sometimes humans act very irrationally. Ultimately, it's the perfect amount of messy. Not everything is clean, but life is also not always perfectly organized. And that's a testament largely to the performances, mostly of our three leads here. They're all strong. Dakota Fanning is great here. She shows really tremendous depth of character, again, in a very believable way. She's making decisions that might not be logical, but you believe that she is making them. She is so torn, she's so confused, she's just trying to figure out what she needs. Jake Johnson is someone who Swanberg works with time and time again, and he's probably the funniest character in the film. His comedy is very much rooted in that of a middle-aged man who is panicking, who is questioning what the hell is going on in his life. Is this what it's going to be? Is it over? Is it too late? Is, as the film title suggests, is the sun going to set? The film is not revolutionary. None of Swanberg's projects really aim to be. They're much more about commenting or showing real humans. There is sometimes commentary on sex or on our kind of societal expectations, but it's never preachy. It's very much just showing life as it is. The film was shot on site in Alaska on 35 mil film, and that kind of texture, that kind of amount of imperfection really fits with the ethos of the film. It's a little bit messy, but it's still beautiful. There are these gorgeous moments within this very chaotic frame, within this very chaotic life. And the cinematography here comes from Ian Mora, who, again, Swanberg has worked with on a few occasions and has kind of moved up from an AC role on previous projects. And at the end of the day, this is sitting near the top of my South by Southwest at this point. Again, it might not work for you if you know already that you hate that mumblecore vibe of regular people trying to figure their stuff out. But it is one of Swanberg's strongest projects, and it's one of Swanberg's more cohesive projects. It feels complete. It feels like all of the pieces have come together, and it's probably a little bit more accessible than maybe some other work. Thank you so much for watching another video. Watch the next one and the next one and the next one. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't. All very helpful. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.